So yeah, so we'll go to the internet, and I'll talk a little bit about this portal and that sort of thing as well. So we've obviously got quite a few little links along the top, but I recommend always going to the portal first, because once you log into the portal, you can actually log in without re-signing into all those other tabs. Otherwise, you just get one of. So we'll go to the portal, and before we click anything, can everyone get to this screen first?
No, I logged into my to the actual Windows section of it, and then it won't let me log into.
Just hit portal. Oh, so yeah, so you still got to log in there.
Yeah, I tried to, but it said
Student ID and the
exact
password.
same as one.
Okay.
I tried to before.
Did you guys have any trouble? No. So yeah, just put your password, your ID number in again.
Yeah.
What was your name again? What's your name?
Samuel Willis.
Villas, yeah. So yeah, so in this portal access here, it's quite deceiving because you think it's just that screen. Scroll right down to the very bottom, and there's some information on how to use email, the Learn system, accessing your files. But the most important thing that I'll get you guys to do tonight is hit this self-service password reset registration. If you do it now, hit that. Only takes you about 2 minutes to do it, so we all do that now, because what tends to happen is the day that you get logged out of your account is a Sunday or a public holiday. For some reason, 90% of the time that's when it happens, and there's no one to ring, and your assignment's due the next day. Okay, so if you do that, what happens is you can reset your own password when you need to. It sends you a text and that sort of thing. But go through there and do that bit of it now, so that you know you can reset your own password in the future. Did it let you do it, Sam?
It did.
Okay. Interesting. That actually lets you do it, yeah. Let's have a look at what you've got on yours.
Yep.
Everyone done that?
Yeah.
So what if I already found the number registered?
Have you already done it?
Yeah, so I just changed my password.
Okay. Yeah.
Yesterday. So I don't need to do
You
it.
don't need to do it if you've already done it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
So that's going to be quite handy for people. You won't get too frustrated. So before we actually get into the learn, I'll just sort of talk a little bit about this. This little portal area now gets you into your Office 365, which is your TAFE emails. We'll go in there in a minute and just have a quick look. Learn, which is our online learning platform. So that's what we'll be using tonight to look at, get you into this class as such, for the learning activities, and that's where you submit your assignments and get your feedback and all those sorts of things. The My TAFE SA is your login for entering CRN, so registering for class registration numbers, etc., and accessing your transcript. So once you've passed some stuff, you can get on through there and have a look at what your official grades are. And probably got My Files, so that just gives you access to some of your files. Yeah, that sort of has become a bit redundant because most of the file storage is now going to be done through Office 365, because you get a terabyte of cloud storage for free in there. You won't have that HR21, that's my pay sort of stuff, whatever that's called. HR stuff, thank you. But you do have the library access, which is the online library. and so that will log you into the library. Now, if you're studying externally for things, or if you're looking to borrow books and things, we don't actually have a physical library here, but that taps you into the library database, and you can actually order books to come to here to pick up if you want. So we still have the ability as a physical library to pick up a book if you want. Or if you're studying externally for a subject, or you live somewhere else, you can get that book. If it's not at your local TAFE library, you can get it sent there. So so there's books going around all the time. So it's plus there's a whole heap of ebooks and videos, etc. through there as well. It also gives you free access to the all the Australian standards which you'll need for certain subjects as well. So you don't have to buy the Australian standards. We've got a license that allows you to look at those. And you won't have that Lumen one. That's my educational stuff through work. So we'll have a quick look at Office 365. So it doesn't matter if you can't get onto this now. We probably won't need to do too much, but basically, just so you know now, as a student at TAFE, you get access to all of these different apps and things as well. So you get a free Outlook account for your TAFE email. As I said, you get a OneDrive storage account. So that's a terabyte of storage, cloud storage. So what I suggest for these classes is we back up to OneDrive and bring a portable USB as well. Really important not to save things onto these computers, so especially not on the desktop. If you're going to save somewhere, it's going to be OneDrive. There is a small H drive on these systems as well that has your number, but that's actually been deleted next month, so you don't put anything in there because it'll be read-only anyway. So I tell people to work locally off a external USB, like a little external hard drive or a USB, quite a big-ish one, and big so that you got a bit of storage, but also you don't lose a little thumb drive as easily. And then we also, at the end of class, I'll show you once, and you'll get it pretty straight away, as how to back up to there, because anything that you save into your OneDrive is going to be instantly available anywhere else once you log in. So when you log in at home, you've got all your files there as well. Word and Excel and PowerPoint, OneNote, etc. So that's digital version. So if you ever open your document, you don't have to have that on your computer. You've got that online version there, and some other a couple of bits and pieces. But the main things there are your email, etc. Now, if you haven't done so before, in your Outlook, mine does look a bit different. But I would recommend forwarding your TAFE emails, because this is the way your TAFE, all the lecturers will contact you through this email. So hit your little grid button up there, I believe. No, it's not that one. Hang on. It's the little cog on the other side. Can everyone got that little cog somewhere? I think yours is red. You got a little settings cog?
Yep. It's like a ringing bell there.
No, the one that's like a round circle, next to the halfway between the bell and the question mark. Yeah,
No.
that one.
That's one.
That one.
Cool.
Yeah. Yep. So in there you should have a down the bottom it says your app settings mail. Is there a mail down the bottom? And if you click on mail, it'll come up on the right, and it has a heap of information. Is mine changed to yours? No. A whole list of things, and you should see a subheading called accounts, and then block or allow, and then the word forwarding. Now mine comes up completely different, so don't look at mine. So if you've hit the little cog emblem over here, in your settings down the bottom comes up mail, hit mail. Over the other side you get a big ribbon of information under about midway down you'll see accounts, and then 2 under that forwarding. Hit forwarding and it will allow you to click start forwarding and then type an email that you use all the time, one that comes to your phone or whatever. Keep a copy and that email, so it's a bit like this. Use something that you can access all the time and you'll get a copy of the TAFE email come to that one that you're looking at regularly. Okay? Because all the TAFE lecturers, we only have your TAFE email and that's what everything gets sent to. So if you're enrolling in something or if someone needs to let you know they're not going to be here, etc., it'll go to your TAFE email. If it's not getting forwarded and you're not opening your TAFE email, you won't get it. So that's what I tend to do. So, if you forwarded your emails, you shouldn't miss anything from TAFE. Now, if I'm ever going to be away from a class and I can't get someone else to take the class on a Monday night, perhaps, I will send you an email, but I'll also send you a message through the Learn platform. However, that message, unless you're on that Learn platform, won't come up, but it does get sent as an email as well to your TAFE email. All right. So, so if there is a case where I'm not going to be in for some reason, if I've got man flu or something worse, I'll try to let you know through the day. If that, I'll obviously know that I'm not going to be here, give you some notice, and means that the class will be cancelled. But I'll tell you what we were going to do, and if you want to keep up or whatever, watch. It might be a recording or something like that. I'm never away very often unplanned, so. Should be okay, but just so you know now, you're going to get your emails, etc. So the next little bit that we'll start looking at is actually registering in this subject on Learn. So hit the Learn tab. Mine will look completely different again because I'll have lots of classes that I look after, etc. So what you need to do is, do you have a Browse Courses button? Browse all courses, and in the search bit that comes up in there, so when you hit this browse all courses, in this search button just type in MSF ID and it's 5014. So if you type that in your that little search and hit enter, thank you. You should get the word use CAD applications to complete models coming up. Click on that and it'll ask you for a enrolment key. And the enrolment key is capital R REvit 2019, no spaces. Okay. So you only need to use that once you're in, you're in. And so every time you come in now, it'll just be in your My Courses section. So when you come in to Learn, you'll see them here. There's a little star at the top right-hand corner on the grid when you first get in as well. Can you see those little stars? And if you click that star, it tends to pop it up the front. That once you've got a few stars, it tends to just put all of them along the top. But when you end up with classes from last semester, etc., we don't tend to kick you out too often because you want to keep the learning, but you might just star all the ones that you're doing that semester to keep it easy. Otherwise, you have a whole, be like mine, you'll have a whole mess of sort of subjects that you don't really know what's going on. So this has just changed for us. This is a completely different layout to what we've had for the last 6 years or 7 years since we've been doing it, but functionality, it's still pretty well the same. So as I said before, once you've got that key, you'll come straight in at the start of class and you'll open it up like that. And we're going to sort of start to look through what we're going to be working in this. Did you get that up, Sam? Did you been
Yep,
kicked out again?
no, I'm on.
Okay.
I'm logged in.
Good. Mine appears slightly different to yours sometimes because mine's in lecturer mode, and so what that means is it's got edit. I can edit things, so sometimes you'll see more things than you can see. That's okay. It's just that there's hidden things. It might be some old things that we had there, but if we delete it, it deletes the student records, etc. So don't worry too much about mine looking a bit different as long as you know where to go. So we can pretty well navigate through the side now. We used to have a series of grids set up in there that you went through, but through here we can navigate through here. So we're going to have a look at some of these things tonight. So we'll have a look at the software that we're going to be using, how to install it at home. You get free 3-year license from Autodesk, and how to set that up and some of the requirements. We'll look at a few of the introduction sort of things and some of the resources that we have available or suggest. But most of our learning is going to be in the REvit short exercises section. So pretty well once we've finished tonight and maybe some of next week, everything we do is going to be in there until we get to the last 2 assessments that aren't in there. And they're assessment 1 and assessment 2. Okay, so for this class you don't need to navigate your way right through because we're sort of going to be doing that tonight, and then we'll just be working in all the exercises. So most of the stuff that we do will be first few weeks at least. There'll be a combination of me showing you things on the screen and you going along and doing it as I go and seeing how you go. And then really it's just how to use the interface and a bit of basic tool use. Then we'll do a few exercises out of a book that you'll follow that book. So that's why you've got 2 screens there. So you open that PDF on your second screen and have your program on the other, and you'll read through. And that's where everyone starts to go at their own pace a little bit. And then we'll get to the stage where we've got some other full project sort of exercises, and it'll be, I'll show you a few steps, you'll continue along. When everyone gets to there, I'll show you a few more steps, continue along. And then it gets to the stage where you'll be like, I'll say we're going to do this 2-story, there's the information, go at your own pace. And some people go quick, some people go, so that's fine. And that's where I get the chance to move around and help people with specific things. But the first few weeks, if you need help, just put your hand up, but it'll be stop the class, I'll help you with something, but it'll be more that sort of thing. So it's a bit more hands-on, and as I said, I don't like to slow people down, but there's a certain pace that I've got to start with. And if I ever go too fast, make sure you tell me so that you went too fast tonight. Can you slow it down a bit? That's fine as well. So a bit about REvit and the software. There's not too much in the... there's a little bit for external students, but that's not you, the lecturer that takes the external stuff. There is an application, this is in the very first section, the start here, introduction section. If you ever need an extension for an assignment, not necessarily for this class because we've only got 2 assessment pieces and I'll talk about them in a minute, but other classes, you need to give a week's, you need to ask for an extension a week before the particular assignment's due, so just remember that. So, you'll use that extension form to submit it to the lecturer a week before, and then you'll get your answer back of what you suggested or how much time you're allowed to have as an extension. And so the reason it's like that is so that people can obviously be working through their assessments gradually, not leave it all to the last week and then go, run out of time, I need a bit more time. So you should be knowing. And if you're sick for a couple of days because you've had the flu or whatever, or and you've had 2 days off work, don't expect to get another week off your TAFE extension. It doesn't really work like that. So if you've had a cold and you had a couple of days sick, you'll get a couple of days extension. That's sort of how it works. So our deadlines are pretty strict in terms of, we've got to have our grades up by a certain date, so we don't have much leeway at the very end, but throughout the semester when things are due, there is a little bit of leeway there, okay? So just remember that that's there if you ever need it for any other subjects as well. I suppose I should, while I'm on that, probably should talk a little bit about the grades that you'll get at TAFE. Most people studied at TAFE before, or not really. Some people new to it. So TAFE's, or it's a vocational education area that we deal with learning outcomes, and they're performance sort of based, and so it's not graded as a scale of grading. It's either you're competent at that particular set of rules around the assessment piece, or you're not competent. Okay, so so that's what competency-based training means. So it's sort of, the best way to describe it is why they did it, because most vocational providers deal with skill sets. So it's like there's some knowledge there, but there's lots of skill, hands-on stuff. We saw the workshop, using computers. It's about doing stuff, not knowing all that stuff and being able to just write it down, or write essays, etc., or theses, etc. So so the competency part comes from if you were at uni and you got a P1 or a P2, you'd be in the 50 to 60% bracket. So for an exam or an assessment, whatever you did, you got 50 or 60% out of that 100 possible percent. With skills and practical things, can you imagine if a plumber was laying some pipes for their test and they only got 60% of it right? But that's still a pass, so then they could move on to the next thing. How confident would you be getting a plumber to come to your house that got 60% right the way through their trade? Okay, you'd be a bit of a worry. And that's where it stems from. That's why that is. So a pass at TAFE, a pass achieved, PA is what you'll get, is 100% competent at all of the things that we have to mark. So we work on a national training package, it's called, not a curriculum, and we've got lots and lots of things that so for this REvit unit, it's ability to orbit, rotate, they're all embedded as well as saving files and managing files and documents and all those things. And you've got to prove through the assessment pieces that we give you, there's certain benchmarks in there and things that we make you do, so that proves to us that you can do it, that you actually can do all that stuff. Okay, so so that's where that competency base is. So if you get at TAFE, you'll get a second chance to submit as well. So you might be very close to it. You think, oh, you were pretty close, but you didn't get all those 100. We'll say these are the things that you missed out. Like, you need to try to resubmit, proving these particular things, and you get one chance to resubmit. So we have a resubmission time as well. If you haven't submitted by the due date and the resubmission date is here, and you only submit at the resubmission, that's counted as your resubmission. You don't get another chance after that, okay? So you've got to meet the first deadline. If you need to change something or update it or whatever, you get to that next week's date or whatever it is to do your resubmission, but you'll only get that one other attempt, okay? So you get 2 chances basically. It's up to the lecturer whether, like, if you might have been just a complete mistake on your behalf. I've had people that have like resubmitted the old work accidentally, same file name and that, and I've said, look, you've told me that you were doing it, you've sent the same file in, do you want to resubmit a different file? That's okay. Like, so it's up to the lecturer to give you another attempt if that's the case, if they think, look, I've seen them in class, they've been working through, so you may get another one, but it'll be the discretion lecture. Theoretically, we only have to give you those 2. chances. So everything's submitted online through the Learn platform as well. So when your assessments come up, we'll show you how to submit and that sort of thing. And usually by a certain time on that due date is the lock off. So it'll shut down after that. So that's how the grading works. So you can get a pass achieved is obviously the ultimate, and that's what hopefully everyone in here will get. The other grade that you'll get is a fail. So if you've submitted, we've said this is not right, and you either didn't submit or you submitted again that was still wrong, F. That's the second worst grade, but the second grade that you can get. And then there's only one other grade that you can get, which is a withdrawal grade. Now, withdrawal grade means you've either told admin or us that you're withdrawing and filled out the paperwork to withdraw from a unit. Now, there's certain things about when you withdraw, whether you get fees or part of your fees back. You might have got that explained when you're enrolled, up to the census dates. But there also is a withdrawal. We can only give you a withdrawal if you have come to all the classes and you just didn't do the final exam. I can't fail you because you actually didn't attempt it. I can't fail something that wasn't attempted. So that would actually be a withdrawal as well, but it's just an informal withdrawal, okay? So you still could get a withdrawal on your transcript without physically withdrawing. So they're the real three grades that you'll obviously encounter. Hopefully you won't encounter all, but you might have seen things about those. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So, yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about the software that we're going to be using. So if we hit the software for home section. So we're going to be using a product from Autodesk called REvit. So REvit's been around 25 odd years, maybe more. And it was a piece of software that was invented by someone outside of Autodesk and then bought by Autodesk from those people. And they've then spent billions of dollars updating it and getting it to where it is. And the reason we teach Revit is because it's the largest BIM capable 3D architectural software in the world in terms of usage. So it's got about, last sort of guesstimate I suppose, it used to have about 82% of the market around the world. I think it's about 75-ish at the moment, but it's got a, quite a big, and so we started delivering it here in 2012, I think. I've been using it since 2009, and I helped Russell next door implement it at back when we were back at Marsden, and I'd just come back from Melbourne. It was all I was using. Every job that I went for in Melbourne, you needed to have Revit, and I didn't have those skills, so I went back and learnt Revit, got jobs, etc., and realised, wow, this is the program. No wonder everyone wants it. But in Adelaide, it was, it was a bit pushed away a little bit. We don't understand it, we don't like it, it's a bit too new for us, and no one really got on board. And the other thing that it had against it, especially in the residential sector, was, and at that time there wasn't much big commercial stuff happening, but it was really expensive. It was about $8,000 a license, and so AutoCAD was probably about $1,800 a license. So people would think, why would I spend that for a piece of software that I haven't really seen around, etc. But we saw it starting to sort of, get some legs. So we thought, if we want to go down the track, this is what we've sort of got to start using. And talking to industry, people were interested in it, but no one was starting to learn it because, unless they had people interstate coming with them, they didn't really know it. So once some of the big jobs in Adelaide started happening, Adelaide Oval was one of the bigger first ones. Adelaide soon realised that if this was going to be the software, which it was, so Adelaide Oval was the first sort of big project in Adelaide that used the software, they didn't have any operators that could use the software. So I was part of an office that had people working in there at the time, and they had what they called the Oval Office set up in town, and they pulled people from every architectural firm that knew a bit about Revit, and there was about 40 people working in that office, and that wasn't enough people that were competent enough to do such a complex job, and so most of the people that worked on the Adelaide Oval were flown in from interstate. And that's what sort of started people thinking, we need to train up Adelaide a bit, and so BIM community, I suppose, started to get some legs and really grow, and we started teaching it at TAFE, and it was, you know, very popular, and it's been from there that, you know, a lot of our students now get jobs based on their Revit skills, not for completing the course. So we get asked for good BIM operators before people have actually finished the course, and that's how they get their jobs. So we have people working on the Adelaide Oval, the hospitals, anything that's using Revit, they're getting jobs in there, especially when the big ones happen, and then they need all the staff to come, you know. So that's what you'll be learning. So it's, you know, quite a powerful bit of software. So Autodesk do give us will give you a free license for 3 years. It's an educational version, and it's still the full version. It's just literally at the top of your screen when you have loaded it, when you're working, it just says educational version of Revit instead of just Revit 2019 or whatever it is. So that PDF, if you click on this red link here, there's a full PDF that shows you all the steps that you have to do to get your software. Do that as soon as you can at home. We won't do it tonight, but so all the steps that are in there, just work through. Now, the main thing to remember when you go through this, the first step is you have to sign up for an Autodesk account. And set that up, and that'll last your life. So my first ever Autodesk account is still my first login for that as well. So it's very simple. Once you've got that, the next bit tells you that you need to log back in using that new password that you've set up. It might go to your junk email or something like that, so just check, sign in. Then you go to the next stage. It's about educational software for home. You'll be looking for Revit. Very important. As an educational institution, we work on the version of the year that we're in. So Revit 2019 is what's on all these computers, what's on my computer to mark people's work until 2020. However, the 2020 version is available. But if you get that 2020 at home now and do some work on 2020, you can't save it to 19. So if you're doing some work at home on 2020 and you come into TAFE, you can't do anything more till you go home. So what I suggest is don't download 2020, keep it 19 until the end of the year. There's not much new stuff happening in 2020 anyway. I have got a version at home that I obviously have to get in touch with what's happening next year because I'm going to be teaching it. The biggest thing I suppose that you won't even need at the moment is the ability to import a PDF and trace over a PDF in 2020. But you can still import a JPEG and work over it anyway. So you don't need to do 2020. It's going to be, some people say, could I download both? You could, but what if you accidentally open in 2020 and then start working and then you've got an assignment that you got, you know, so it just gets a bit messy. So, yeah, that's my strongest thing. Just get 2019, you're not going to miss out. And when it gets to next year, you can get 2020 anyway. Now, the next stage is once you've got that software, or once you've gone in to say, oh, you want that software, what it will actually do is give you a serial number and a product code. Those two things will get emailed to you, but do a screenshot when you see them as well. If you ever lose those, they're the hardest things to get back because you don't deal with us, you deal with Singapore, Autodesk in Singapore. So it's quite a hard thing for some people to re-find those. And so then once you've got those, you've got two choices. You can download the software on the site. However, it's a big download. It's about just over 8 gig. So most people even when you've got your blue cord at home plugged into your computer, tends to drop out, or your firewall starts to sort of get a bit itchy by, after half an hour or whatever, and says no. So some people try a couple of times before they get it. But because of that, what we do is we have a version of that software. So next week, if you bring a bigger than 8 gigs, that's just slightly bigger, so you might need to bring a 16 gig pen drive or an external hard drive. Just give them to me and I can plug them in and put the software on. And then when you get home, you need to copy it from to your desktop, click the install, which I'll show you when I put it on your hard drive. You click the install, it'll do the install, and then you put those product keys that you've got from your account onto that, and it will be registered to you. Okay, so that'll be next week. Hopefully you can get that up and running, and it's pretty simple once you've done that. It's a pretty straightforward sort of process of actually getting it to work. The other couple of things that you have to bear in mind is you need to make sure before you've installed it is you change your computer's language setting to Australian, so the region needs to be in Australia. If it picks up that your region is American, so the computers usually come by default as American because that's where they all come out of, it will somehow, because it uses you have to be connected to the internet even if you're getting it off mine, it'll actually pick up your IP address and look at that location, but it downloads a particular version. So if you've got American, you'll get feet and inches, so you won't get the metric. Okay, so you'll get the imperial version, and if you do that, you've got to uninstall and do what I've just said anyway. So those are the couple of things that you can do this week. Just check your language setting. Just settings, just do language, and you'll get your preferences come up, and just tick those. So English Australian, I think, is one in brackets. Otherwise English English, I think it's called. So yeah, so there's a couple of glitches things that can go wrong. But if you do all those other things right, you should be fine. The other thing is it does download some other content, and sometimes people find that just doesn't come. But if that happens, ask me. There's a few links I can send you to help it fix those sorts of things as well. The reason it's important to get the free software at home is if you are sick and you want to work along, you can, and if you're missing any classes, you can watch my recording. You can still do it at home. Don't wait until you get sick and you haven't installed it, then you get behind. So try to do it quite quickly. And also what a lot of students find is when they're only coming one night a week, during the week they might actually practice something, and the more you practice any computer program, the better you are at it, the more you retain. So that's all there. So it says it in the notes here that make sure you don't do the 2020 version, 2019, because it can't be coming back. Now, one other thing to mention about the software. Unfortunately, REvit, there's no version for Macs. There's never been a version for Mac, and it doesn't look like there'll ever be a version. So REvit, the Autodesk community has a specific forum, and they say any updates you want every year, we listen to the forum, and the most common things we try to implement in our forum. The most common things that have been there for the last 10 years, when is a version for Mac going to be? Never been answered. So unfortunately you can't run it on your Mac, but you can get a version of Parallels. Has anyone got Mac before I talk about it? A couple of people. So you can run it successfully on a Mac if you use Parallels, and so Parallels obviously needs a version of Windows to run on your Mac as well. Okay, so it's quite easy. It's easy enough to do. There's a link on here, and I can show you guys next week or tonight how to get a student version, because you're a student now, of Parallels for $49 instead of $200. And that's the only extra cost you'll have to pay. So you buy that bundle of Parallels, and then you need to also get a version of Windows, but as a TAFE student you get it for free. Same place, you get the free version of Windows, and then you need to install Windows and Parallels and then Windows in that, and then basically you can install REvit on that Windows part of your computer. It's a little bit different to boot camping your computer. You can use boot camp if you want, but most Mac users don't want to split their computer and use it half and half. Parallels works a bit differently. It's either one or the other, so you don't lose your power of your Mac, I think. I'm not really a Mac person. One of our staff is all Mac, like he started his career in graphic design back in the 80s, and that's, you know, the way they went. And he does Parallels, and with Revit, no problem at all. All good, but he said he'll never boot camp it, so I don't know. So yeah, so that's a little bit, I think, down here, getting started. Once you've got 2019 as well on your computer, there's another little hot fix. So they've updated 2019 in March. It was like a bug fix. Once you've got it, all you've got to do is just click on that and download the update. And you don't have to have Revit open. You just double click on it and it'll actually install on your computer. So it'll update it. So when your Revit comes up, it'll say Revit 2019.2 once you've got that update. So just a few bugs there that were... Now I believe on this Autodesk Software Home V4 PDF might be right down the bottom. Now, yeah, so that down the bottom it tells you how to change your region and language setting. So how to change it to English Australian there, to set your time zone to Adelaide, how to install it all, serial numbers, etc. Just trying to find the bit for the other. Installing Autodesk. So there's a few computer requirements as well, or some information about if you're going to buy a new computer, what you'd look for. Most computers will run it. It'll just be the rendering side of things that it might struggle with if you've got just a really low spec computer. So there's the stuff about Mac users. So it's in the bottom, in that next section. So this is the TAFE portal that takes you to the section where you can purchase your Parallels for $49 and your free version of Windows. So go into here and look for Parallels. So in the student section there you can see, if you go more software, Parallels Desktop 14 for Macs. So that's the one that you need to get there. There's the price there, so it's, you know, just under half price. Add it to your card, etc. Tells you how to load it down. And then you also can just go to the Microsoft section and get a version of Windows 10, and that's free in from that section. So that's in the course section there. We went to installing Autodesk Revit. So just scroll down there and you'll see the bit about Macs to iMac, MacBook. It's there. Alright. So yeah, so it's a bit frustrating that it doesn't go straight on with, like most of the other Autodesk software will go straight onto a Mac, but that's the workaround. So should we have I'll just have a look now, just before we get right into the software, just a little bit of of an introduction sort of thing to working on computers. So just right down the bottom of in the first section, start here, the introduction sort of section. If you scroll down underneath there, there's a little bit about workplace health and safety in the sense of sitting at computers. So I don't know whether some of you work in a computer type environment now or sit down for a long time, but it's quite different to you know, working in an environment that you're moving around a lot. So there's sort of a requirement for actually keeping yourself moving and adjusting your chair and that sort of thing. So I really like you guys to be able to, and girls, stand up as much as possible. So especially with these classrooms, how they've got the rows, like if I'm talking and you're looking at the screen, feel free to stand up and have a bit of a stretch or walk over here or that sort of thing. The more you do that, the better you are, because what tends to happen, especially when we're working on a program, is and I know because I've worked in offices, for most of my life, you tend to be drawn towards the screen. So, by half an hour in, you're a bit more forward, you're not blinking, you're staring at the screen, you're wondering why your eyes are dry and your back's sore, and then you look, oh, that's because I'm right up here again, you go back. So the more you can get up and stretch and actually get used to sort of being conscious of what you're doing, the better. But these chairs, just so you're aware, are quite adjustable. So this chair that I've got up the front is exactly the same as yours. So there's 4 main sort of bits of adjustment that you need to know. The first one, if you actually stand up and have a look, this back piece here actually comes up and down. And so that's really supposed to be your lumbar support. And what I find in these rooms a lot is they obviously get loosened, and if people press on the back, they go right down, which is usually much too low for people. So you just need to actually wind the handle on the back left-hand sort of spine of the chair, and that loosens it to get it up and down. So while you're sitting in there, if you've loosened it, bring it up so that it sort of sits quite nicely in that lumbar part of your back, and then tighten it off there. The next couple of things are on the right-hand side. There's 2 levers. The front one is your hydraulic gas lift up and down, okay? So what we need to do with that gas lift is that if you tuck yourself in under your desk and put your feet flat on the ground, that gas lift height, we should be able to have our arm, so right arm if you've got right, or left if you use your left, but holding your mouse, your arm should be at sort of a nice 90-degree angle, so not with your shoulder up, but nice and just relaxed there, and not being pushed up by the desk and not having to reach down for that mouse. So that's about that hydraulic lift height. So if you get to about that, that's quite good. The next couple of things is the one the control behind that on the right, so the one at the back on the right hand side, actually tilts the lumbar support backwards and forwards a little bit. So that'll loosen it or pull it forward or back, and so you want to feel like you're comfortable. The best way to sort of know if you're comfortable once you've got your feet at that flat on the ground and your arms right is if you push it forward and you feel like you're leaning into the computer, it's usually nudging you forward too much. And if you go back too far, you actually feel like you're actually trying to support your back with your abs. So if you start to feel like your abs are working, it means you're trying to actually lean out of that position. So something halfway in between those two is usually about right. And once you've done that, you might then decide that lumbar support actually might be a bit low now because you've actually moved that. So again, spin that little lever there and pull it up or down and get that right now that that's in the right position. And the last lever, the one on the left hand side, actually rocks you forward and back a little bit. So even though the back support was sort of tending to do that, that was more to get our posture right. This one's now, if our feet were just off the ground or if they were too far, we can actually sort of adjust those a little bit as well. Again, we don't want to be rocked too far forward that we feel like we're going to, you know, fall off the front of the chair, and not too far back that we can't touch the ground again. Okay, so once you've done that, you know, pull yourself in and have a little look at where you're looking. Now, your eyes should be looking to the top border of the screen. So that little plastic border around the screen should be right at where you're looking. If you're looking straight ahead, you should be looking at that. So they do just push up or pull down, these monitors. And so if you can get as close to that as possible, it means that you're, you know, in a pretty good starting position. Now, what you have to remember is a bit different to an office. In an office, you usually got the same chair all day and you'll adjust it pretty well once or twice, maybe a month. These, every time you come in here, someone would have adjusted it. So get used to adjusting at the start of class, getting into a good position. And then again, every 20 minutes or so, have a little stand up, move around a bit, have a stretch. And that's why once we do start working, you can leave and go and whatever, as much as you want. Don't feel like you've got to sit there. Especially when I'm talking or showing you stuff, stand up, have a look at the back. And just remember to blink occasionally. So what I'll do sometimes is I say, everyone have a break. I can see you, you know, nearly kissing your computer screens, and you'll all go, oh yeah, we are. Like, it's just natural. So trying to break out of that is good. The longer you work in offices, the harder it's going to get. And hopefully you're trying to do this as a bit of a career change and something that you're going to be doing for a while. And the last thing I want you to do is have a shorter life in an office because you got a sore back and sore shoulders and you're hunched over because you've picked up some bad habits. So just bear in mind all that information there and try to work as effectively as you can. So let's have a look at some any questions about those chairs? So same at home. So it is a requirement to have, like when you're setting up an office or even a home office, to either have the chair adjustable or the desk adjustable to get into that position. Usually the chair adjustable is a better option because it gives you more functionality and swivel. Worst type of chair to sit at a computer is a fixed chair because A, it's not going to be the right height, and B, you just don't have that ability to swivel slightly, and that's locks you into place. So if anyone knows, if you worked on a kitchen bench and you're sitting at a bar stool, you really hunch over quite quickly. Same with if you're sitting at a dining room table on a fixed dining chair, and which tends to be what we do with laptops quite easily. You tend to sort of be either slunched down or hunched over because it's just not at the right height. So just bear that in mind when you're working at home as well, because you will be doing lots of hours on computers. So let's actually open up a little bit of a BIM document. So I've clicked on the Introduction to Revit and Building Information Modelling down the left hand side, and we'll just have a quick look at this little diagram that's on my screen here. And so I just want to introduce the term BIM to you, or the acronym BIM. Has anyone heard that before? So it stands for Building Information Modelling, and Revit is a BIM capable piece of software. So the confusion people have sometimes is they think Revit is BIM. BIM is something different. BIM is the philosophy around how we work in that building information modelling. but Revit is capable of achieving building information modelling. There's lots of other software that's BIM capable as well, but the software is not BIM, it's capable of producing BIM. So all it means is that a BIM capable software, if you're using the BIM side of things, it's the information that's in the model. So the model is part of it, but it's the information that we're giving it. So if I think about a program that maybe everyone knows, like SketchUp, does everyone know the program SketchUp, which is a free software that started with Google, produced it originally? It's not BIM capable yet. It's got some BIM plugins, but it's more of a pretty picture. So it has a lot of, looks really good, you can do a 3D model, you can walk around, you can show someone, say this is it, but there's no information in there. It's just the model, okay? That's the difference with Revit has the ability to put all of your information and your workflow in with that model, okay? And we'll elaborate on that as we work, and I'll show you how that's done. But basically, this is like a little bit of a prompt for me to sort of talk a little bit about a workflow. And once upon a time when we did concept designs, detail designs, analysis and documentation, they were all sort of done separately. We started with a concept design and it was a sketch. So we sketched something out and then we maybe made some models that were sort of physical models that were separate, and that was our concept. And we might have done, 10, 20 of those different concepts for a client until they sort of said, yeah, that's what we like. And then they signed off on one. But then we put that aside and we went into the next thing. So then we actually said, now we've got to start detailing it up. So we're going to use something else. And the detail design was, when I first started doing this, was we sketched, then we moved into detail. So that went away. That was the idea. Now we get the drawing board out, we're going to start actually detailing it up, another piece of paper, okay? Then we use that same stuff for some analysis, but we used to have to then use some other programs, maybe programs, but we use some graphs and some trigonometry and those things to start to do some analysis, some shadows and where the sun was going to come. We were sort of trying to imagine, what time of the year it was going to be and what the angle was going to be, those sorts of things. This is where you start to work out your fire services, your volumes of rooms, is the air conditioning going to be big enough, those sorts of things, heat loads and all that sort of stuff. Then we needed to start to then say, well, now that's all working, we've got to spit out the documents in order for this building to be done. So again, drawing board sort of stuff or 2D CAD, starting to do some documents to actually get a set of drawings issued so that the builder could say that's what we're going to quote on, etc. And then once they started, then those drawings were then sent to the fabricators, and the fabricators were then looking at those drawings, then doing another set of drawings and say, right, now we've got to do some drawings that show the steel, and we've got to fabricate the steel or do the kitchen details or the shop drawings or those sorts of things. So it was all separate. When we talk about this 3D BIM sort of workflow, it basically starts in Revit and doesn't ever leave it. Okay, so everything's done in the same piece of software. We don't have to go from one to the other, etc. We can bring other softwares in, but we can keep everything together. So we start our concept design in here as a concept design. We've got the ability to do what's called design options, which means that we don't even have to have 3 different models. We have one model and we can show the client by clicking on or off, this is this facade on the front, this is this, but it's the same model. It's not looking at another model, it's the same model with 2 different facades, 3 different facades, whatever, okay? Once we've got that sort of signed off, they might say, oh, I like the 3rd option. We just go click and that makes that the primary option, the others disappear, we've signed off on it. Still, we haven't deleted it, we haven't had to start again. We can then start working on our detail design. So the detail means, exactly where the window's going to go, where are the, what are the volumes of the rooms, and etc. And then we can sort of do our analysis within the model, spit out the documents, which is what Revit Intermediate is, how we get the documents out of Revit. So whether it's the 2D stuff, 3D stuff, details, sections, elevations, all that sort of stuff is in here. And the model can actually be shared with the fabricators, so they're actually drawing their stuff within the model, doing clash detection to make sure it all works. 4D and 5D construction is actually phasing or timelining the model. So when I first heard about 4D stuff, it was one of my friends who has worked in construction all his life as well, but he manages massive sites now. He's actually working in Malaysia at the moment, and he's told me that, he said, when I start work in the morning, I've got 500 staff that report directly to me, but there's 5,000 on site at a time. It's basically, they're redoing an area of Malaysia that's like a small city. And so about 10 years ago, he was telling me, when I first started using a bit of REvit, he said, I've just seen this 4D, 5D sort of construction timelining stuff. So instead of using Gantt charts, which is where these people are going to come in, the next people are going to, trades are going to come in, and those sorts of things, which is like basically a bar chart. The model actually has the timelines in it, and where everything should be at a certain date, that's what he'll see. And so when they did the hospital, they actually implemented some of this in some new technology with some iPads. And so the window manufacturers, whenever the window was issued, it had a barcode on it. And when it arrived off the truck, they scanned that particular window, which that data went straight back up to the model. And the model then knew, so someone looking at in the office could actually say, the windows have arrived in the model. They haven't been installed yet, but then when each time they installed it, they would scan that one and say installed. So instantly up in the model, it would say which windows were installed. It would start to show those windows. So the timeline of the model was actually accurate to what was happening, rather than a foreman walking around at the end of the week and trying to count things up and then reporting that back, which was another piece of paper that had to go to someone else, which was a real lag. So it's like instant information. So that's what happens in this 4D, 5D world, which also has a lot to do with budget, so how the money's tracking, when things are due, etc. So that's a really powerful bit of information for on-site sort of stuff. The other thing that's really clever is the construction, during construction, is the logistics, how we're going to get things on site and what time we're going to have to spend on site getting things to and from site. So giving you an example of that, setting up cranes on site is really quite a big logistical sort of thing, because cranes are very expensive to have on site, and if you're not getting as many lifts as you can from a position of a crane, it's got to be disassembled and moved to the next position. So usually it would be manually drawn up in 2D, where the best positions for a crane might be. But by being able to do it in 3D, they can actually physically move the crane in the 3D model. So it's like a VR sort of stuff, virtual reality sort of stuff. A really good example of how they use that at the Adelaide Oval was the biggest sort of truss that's over that main stand, the big one that looks like the eye. So when that was coming to site, they actually drew the truck with that on and drove it into the model, so in a 3D sense, because the approach and which way it came was dependent on could it actually get to the spot, and what things they had to make sure that were moved, etc. Like so, because it was so big, if they went the wrong way, they might not be able to reverse out and get around the other side, and it would have been time and money and those sorts of things. So that was actually like much, it sounds like it's a big deal, but it was quite a quick thing for someone to do in an office, was to actually go, there's a truck the same size, this is the size crane, piece of equipment we've got, that's where we're going to have the crane, etc., and actually draw it in. Okay. So even to take that to a really, really simple form, that's like something really quick that you can do logistically, I'm designing a house for myself at the moment, and I didn't quite know how the car parking arrangement was going to work at the front. And so what do you think I did in my model? Drew the two cars that were possibly going to have to move around each other, and I could quickly see if they were going to have enough space behind the car to get one past and the other without having to move another one. Okay, so stuff like that. And then I could move it into the garage and say, now if this car parks here, does it have to stop there for that garage door to open quite well? Do I need to move that door? Is that the best way to have it? Really easy to do, okay? Yeah, it took me 2 minutes, but at least I knew it worked. I did have to widen the driveway slightly, but now I know it works. So yeah, so when you're working in 3D, really easy to do that stuff. Maintenance and operation. So when the maintenance crew take over a building, hospital for example, I think Spotless got the contract for that. I know the guy that did all the as-built models, which meant after the hospital was finished, that his company had to go in and then not redraw, but change some things that had changed on site. So there was some design changes that happened or occurred, and make sure that that was all right, because that model was part of the contract to look after that building, because they don't want to say, we think there's some plumbing in the back of this wall, we better cut a hole in and have a look. They want to look on the model and go, where's the plumbing? Where's the wires? So if this was a ceiling, we wouldn't know where all these cable trays are. But in the model, that's where they are. This is where we've got to access, okay? Those sorts of things. And then right back to renovation. At some stage when the building gets changed or they want to renovate, they don't have to go in and redraw it up. We've already got it. Let's have a look at, do we want something put here, 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 here? So it just keeps going around and around. So that's the sort of software that you're going to be learning. And that's what I said, it's one of the most popular BIM capable softwares used around the world. Is there any questions about that? Anything anyone wants to add in? So let's minimize that one now and actually open up the software. So if you hit your Windows key, so there's one on the bottom of your screen, but also this one here, so there's flying windows, hit that one. And then you have to just type in REvit, R-E-V-I-T. And you should see two things come up. Well, maybe three, but you'll see REvit 2019 desktop app. And you may also see REvit Viewer 2019. Does anyone see that as their first option? Okay. If you clicked REvit Viewer 2019, the next time you opened it may be the primary option. The reason I'm telling you that, is everyone listening to me, REvit Viewer 2019, never open REvit Viewer 2019 here. Okay? Never open REvit Viewer 2019 here.
Yeah.
Looks the same, feels the same, operates the same until you go to press save. It's a viewer, you cannot save your work. Okay? So the first person that opens REvit Viewer 2019 will lose probably up to 30 minutes of their life. Because, why I say that is because everything you've done until you decide, oh, I'm going to save now, you've got to do again in REvit 2019. Wow. Okay? It's just a viewing program, but it allows you to draw, but then you can't save. So it looks exactly the same. So we actually tried to get IT to take it off, but it's physically not possible to split it. So that's why hopefully I made that really clear.
Yep.
I try to every year, but someone usually loses a bit of their life. So REvit 2019 is the only one we open. So click on REvit 2019. Takes a little bit to open. Now there was some quite big changes from 2018 to 19. That's why going up to 2020 at home isn't going to really be an advantage. Every couple of years there's big changes, maybe every 3 or 4, but in 2019 it's the same. So same as 2020. So what happened in 2019 was all of this stuff completely changed, which is all new. So this is how it opens up, and we've got a model area and a family area here, and the same sort of applies here. So yours will look a bit different. Mine is the last things I opened. It keeps a record of the last things you opened, or it just gives you some sample files there to start with. So in the model section, this will open an existing model. So you'll hit open and then you can browse through your files to find that model. When you go new, it will open a dialog box that then asks you to start with a template if you want, or you can browse for your own template once you get to that stage. The families is, we'll talk a little bit more about later, but families are unique parts of a model that you might want to make. So they're like a block or something like that. So it might be that there's a window, and then you want to create, or you've got a window family that you want to load, or you want to actually create a new window to bring into your model ultimately. Okay, so you work in family editing, etc. Standalone down here, or you can do it within the model, but the model is the main bit up here. So if you just go to new, we won't start a new project, but I just wanted to show you in here this new project dialog box. So this is where you can browse for your own template, or you can start with a construction template, but we always drop that down and start with what sort of template do you think we'll start with in this class?
Architectural.
Architectural, yep. That's the discipline we're working in, architectural. So the construction, the structural and the architectural in Revit used to be 3 different versions of Revit. And now they combined them 4 years ago to one suite of Revit, because they acted the same and they could be interlinked, etc. But they decided, well, we may as well give everything to everyone, because sometimes there's a bit of crossover there. So what's happening when you open these are, it's going to search for the architectural template, for example, is a template that's already got some stuff in there ready to start an architectural project, so a house or a building, ready to start a project, but it's a templated file, meaning it's got some stuff in it. When we start to work through, especially in Revit Intermediate in there, we'll work through a project and customize some things and put our own fonts in and all those, and add some new families, etc. And at the end, we can actually save that as a template. And then when you ever come into here, you can browse for your own template. It's already got your own customized things in it. So most offices will have their own templates, and that's a big job in an office to set up the template. And that means that when they start a project, they might look on their server and say, I'm going to start with a 2-story residential house. If I open the template, the type of windows and doors we use in those projects are already loaded. I don't have to go searching or remove or use the wrong ones. And a lot of the other things are already loaded, the levels and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so it's quite good. I worked for a building company this time last year for 6 months, helping them set up their templates, because they just started using Revit 6 months before. And so it's quite a big job. You know, they had some really good operators in there, but they had to work on their jobs to get them out, and they just didn't have the time. I was brought in to help ease up some of that time, but I got loaded with more jobs as well. So, but they've got some really good templates now. But usually, if someone in an office, the BIM manager it's their responsibility to update the templates and keep things current, etc. Make sure everyone's using the right versions. So they'll have their own title blocks in there and all those sort of stuff. They don't have to go searching elsewhere for all that stuff every time you set up a project. So we won't open one of those up yet. We might actually open up. Has everyone got a sample architectural project? If you click on that sample architectural project, it'll take a few minutes and then it'll open up. So, did everyone get that up? So this is just a sample project that's given to you. Now, what we're seeing here is sort of the interface. This is what we're going to be working with from week to week. So this is what I suppose the first couple of sessions is really about, is trying to get you familiar with where everything is, have a look of it and feel comfortable. So, because the hardest thing about learning a new program isn't the doing of the stuff, it's finding where I go to actually create those things. So in essence, this big area here is like our workspace. So this is almost like our sheet. And this is actually a sheet view. So this is the title block in this view. To change what I'm seeing in here, we've got what's called a project browser. So it browses through the project to look at different views that I might have set up. So if you have a little look at here, in a template, I was talking about a template before, usually we've got some floor plans and some elevations set up by default, okay? So if you now change this view here from a title sheet, but floor plans, if you double click on level 1, you'll notice that you've got another tab here. So you've still got that one, but you've got another tab, and that view now is that floor plan, okay? So what is a level 1 floor plan? Some of you may know this, but a floor plan view is a view of a floor looking at about 1200 high straight down on the floor. So if we're looking at this room's floor plan, you imagine we sliced it off about this high. So anything below that high, we're looking down on, okay? We're not seeing the lights, they're above us, okay? We might sometimes see some structural beams indicated as a dashed line, which means they're over the top of our head, but we wouldn't see the lights until we turn the camera up that way, and that's a ceiling plan. So it's a different view, okay? So, so that's what a floor plan is. Always remember that, because sometimes people say, oh, I can't see my da-da-da. Well, it's because it's higher than that cut, okay? We're not supposed to. We're looking down, and we're looking down from that level to the level 1 floor plan, so to the carpet in this room. We're not seeing down to the ground floor below, okay? But we can adjust the view range to look down if we want, but by default, it's literally looking at that 1200 section. That's all it's doing, okay? So that's essentially what a floor plan is looking at. A site plan, if we double click on the site plan, is still a plan view, but it's looking straight down from a bird's eye view, the whole site. So we're seeing the roofs, the top of the trees, everything's right down on the site. Contours, yep, so there's a building pad with some contours in there, that's right. Now, if we go back to that level 1, you can use your tabs along the top, or you can click in the project browser. Now, can everyone see in that level 1 floor plan, there's 4 funny looking markers. This one here, this one, and this one. Can everyone see those?
Yep.
Like a round circle with a pointy bit, and some of them have got some numbers in them. Now, so what they are is the elevation markers. The elevation markers are literally little cameras, I suppose, or showing you where the views are. So this one here is the northern elevation. So just remember, by default, the top of the page is the north. So we're looking down to the northern face of the building. North is up, so that's the northern face. Bottom one's the southern elevation. Okay, then we've got east and west. So if I looked at let's go to the southern elevation down here. We can double click on the southern elevation in our project browser. So that's now looking, across to, that was that kitchen, level 1, there was the kitchen in there, and we saw the long part of the building coming out there, okay? So an elevation view is, a flat view. It's not in a perspective view. It's literally what we would see if we sort of had that flat line cut, okay? So it's looking from a certain distance away from the building straight onto the building, okay? So that's what the elevations are, and depending on where your elevation marker is set on your floor plan is depending on what you're going to see. So the reason I told you to set up to have a look at the southern one, because you notice with this northern one, it's actually in part of the building. This is actually a wall that's here, so it's quite close to the building. So if we had a look at our northern elevation, it's actually been put in front of, there's a wall that runs behind it here. Because if it was set back, all it would see would be the wall, that retaining wall. So it's been manipulated to get the right view, okay? So that's the elevations, just to give you a bit of an idea. Now, if we go back to that level 1, I keep going back to that level 1 because we've got it there. The other type of marker that I want you to sort of identify is one that sort of looks a bit similar to these elevation markers, but it's this blue one here. This one that has a line that runs across this way and a little tail on it, but it also points up that way. That's a section marker. So a section marker is placed in looking that way, but the camera is actually cutting through where that line is. So if we wanted to look into that kitchen, what it's actually going to show us is what it looks like to stand behind the island bar, okay? Or the breakfast bar. So if we go to the section, I think it's the longitudinal section, on your section buildings there, you'll see that section view. And you'll notice that now we can actually see inside. The elevations we're looking from the outside. This is cut through inside, so we're actually seeing the column, the kitchen. Look, there's the dishwasher, all the shelving, etc. And in the other rooms. So we see all the rooms, the toilet upstairs, etc. So that's what a section is. It's looking through the cut through of the building. So we've got longitudinal sections and cross sections. So longitudinal, the longer length of the building usually, and a cross section cuts across the short side of the building. Now, if we scroll down, actually go up a little bit, just above those elevations on your project browser, above the sections, can you see that there's some 3D views as well? If we double click on the approach view, this is a little camera that's been set up as a 3D view, and the approach obviously is where the cars drive in. So this must be the main road that the cars come down, the contours are here, and that's sort of what they see. So that's something that we can physically set up once we've got the model in, is drop a camera in to give us a view of a different area. The other interesting ones that are in there's one of the front yard, so you can see the front yard. There's one of the kitchen. The kitchen's quite a good one. It's got a lot of little detail in it as well, like a bottle of wine and some glasses, etc. The living room. And if you scroll down in your project browser now, what you might actually see is this rendering category with the similar sorts of names in the views.
Yep.
So everything other than the rendering is a live view of the model as it is now. So each of these views that we've been looking at are views of the one model. They're not separate images of separate drawings. It's one model and it's got some different views sliced through and placed in there. And so if something changes now in this view, if I deleted that chair, it would be deleted out of all of these other views that it was in. Okay, so it's live. However, the rendering ones are a photographic snip of how it looked at the time. So things might be deleted out now, but these were a stamp in time and they won't change. It's like someone taking a photo, let's move all the furniture around now, but I've still got the photo of how it was. That's what a rendering is. But a rendering also obviously puts the realistic colours and everything. So if you have a look at the rendering of the approach, it looks a little bit more realistic than the one we saw before. And probably the kitchen one is the one that you can probably tell the rendering view looks a lot more photorealistic than just the 3D one, because the rendering process actually applies those materials and those sorts of things. However, we can't change and delete from this, it's just a JPEG. Okay, it's just a picture, and if that bottle and that wine, you know, those glasses were deleted out of the model, this wouldn't change. That makes sense? So the only thing in our project browser that can be held on to, I suppose, in the past is the rendering views. They're a snip in time, whereas everything else is the one model with different views applied. Okay. So if we just close down some of our tabs along the top here now, so we just close the kitchen and the approach and the living room, the kitchen, and maybe let's actually close all of them down. Except for, let's close all of them down. Go back to that project. So I'm just going to open, you don't have to necessarily do this, but I'm just going to open the level 1 floor plan, the 3D living room. Actually, that probably do for now. And what I'm going to do here is in my view panel. So this, and I'll go through all of this next week, but this is known as the ribbon, and we've got all these tabs along the top that open and change this ribbon, I suppose. And so I've just gone to the view tab, which changes this. And what I want to do is actually tile my view. So tiling my two views that were open at the top, or there's 3 open on mine, these 3 tabs. So if I say tile the view, I actually get all 3 views there. So what I actually want to do is I'll close that one and just have these 2. And so why I'm sort of doing this is if I'm looking at my level 1 floor plan here, if I select the ottomans, can you see that that first ottoman has just deleted out of the 3D view? So that's just sort of proving that this model here and this model here are the same model. There's that first ottoman. If I delete it, it's deleted out of both images. That's the one model. Okay. So anything we delete in the model is going to be represented in the rest of the model. Okay. But however, if we want to just show some things in here but not delete them, we can hide them in a view. Okay, so that's one of the ways we'll be able to manipulate views. We might say, in this view, there's too much stuff that I don't need. I'm not showing that sort of stuff. You know, there might be a whole heap of other stuff that, you know, just makes it too busy. So we might say, actually, I'm going to simplify this. So it may be in a floor plan, we've got some trees really close to the house, but we don't need them in the floor plan. They're part of the site plan. They're doing nothing but just make it, you know, look too busy. So I can hide those trees in the floor plan view, because if I deleted them, they've deleted off the site plan. Okay, so that's where we have to sort of start thinking about every view that we've got is the whole model. Okay, so we tend not to delete things in views too often. It's hiding things. Once we've built the model up, that's what we want, but we can manipulate the view. So yeah, so I suppose why I sort of started to show you that was just to give you an idea of the interface that we're going to use. Get I suppose, familiar with some of the content there, sections and elevations and floor plans. But next week when we come in, this is what we'll be starting with, and I'm going to go through what all of this terminology is and where things are and that sort of stuff. So we'll actually look at the ribbon, look at how each of the buttons and the panels work, look at the project browser, and I suppose just today navigating your way through how important that project browser is. And also the properties down the bottom. So you probably see there's another tab there that changes to properties. And that's the properties of a view. So the property tab, if I change it, has all of this information about this floor plan view. And this is where we start to get into the information part of the BIM. So we've got the building information that we can be linked into all aspects over here. And then obviously there's lots of other things like this little scale portion here. So this is the view control bar that we need to know what all this stuff is. Information center, what sort of all this stuff does as well, and what this quick access toolbar does, what happens behind the file tab. So there's a heap of basic sort of interface learning that we'll do next week. And all right. And we'll also next week look at ways to manipulate views, but ways to orbit around the views and ways to move things in the views. So we'll start to look at how to actually orbit using the mouse and that sort of stuff. So the next, I suppose the only thing that I want you guys to think about doing between now and next Monday, and the other thing that I didn't explain very well was the assessment for this subject is there's only two assessment pieces. There's an exam and a rendering exercise. So remember we spoke about the rendering, applying the materials and making a JPEG. So that's done in one session. And the rendering is we give you a model already and you apply the colours and that sort of thing and actually get 4 JPEGs out of it, 2 at day and 2 at night. Relatively straightforward, and it just takes one session. You work through a step-by-step sort of instruction. The exam is actually like a 3-hour start now, finish now type exam, and it's a little house. And it's the last thing that we do, but the week before the exam we do a rehearsal exam or a practice exam that's almost identical, that gives you an understanding of, you know, did I need to ask a lot of questions and what sort of timing I was at. So you've got sort of a week then to think, they were the stages that I'm, you know, fumbled through or whatever. Now, everything leading up until then, other than the rendering task, is leading you to that exam anyway. And we'll actually be doing more complex buildings than the exam one. It's a very simple little house. So don't freak out. As long as you come to every class, and if you don't come, work at home and do everything that we need in the class, which is most people will finish everything. There's not much homework in this class. You will pass. Okay, it's as simple as that. It's just the repetitiveness of every week of doing what we're doing leads you to the skills of being able to do that. Okay, so and the 3 hour time limit that we set is so that we know that you are competent at doing these things. That, you know, if you give someone a week and they'd probably get it done if they weren't competent, they'd be able to look up stuff. It's, you know, a realistic time. No one's ever needed more than the 3 hours. So it's that just gives you an idea and stops you from stressing too early. The fastest has been about an hour and a half, and the slowest has been just before the 3 hours. So the 3 hours is, you know, enough time to recheck your work. And what I tend to do is when you submit that, that's you know, I'm talking 14 weeks away. I'll check it on the computer, and if I see something obvious, say go back and change that, and that can usually get people. That's the resubmission. You've done it, so you don't have to worry. All right. So there's not too much. Like, you'll learn a heap, and you'll get to the stage of wow, I can. You know, you by the end of this Revit intro, you should be able to draw your own house up in 3D. Not with all the fixtures and fittings and furniture and all that. You'll be able to bring some components in, but you'll be able to draw everything up. Obviously, most people's houses aren't too complex, I hope, but that's where you'll get to. So I always tell the story when I learnt Revit. I was naturally never that good at computers. When I started my study, I came from a manual drafting background. My first degree was industrial design, and it was all about sketching stuff. And so when I got into drafting, it was all boards, and that's what I actually liked about it, was actually the drawing part of it. So I didn't really love computers. But when I sort of got into 2D stuff, I didn't mind it. I was okay at it. I got jobs. I did jobs. I worked in big firms, you know, with 40 architects and big jobs and things like that. But when I got into Revit, it was, as I said, about 2019, 2010, 2009. I went to Melbourne, and a lot of the jobs said AutoCAD and Revit. That's what they wanted, and I was like, what? You know, I've heard of Revit, but I've never used it. So I decided I'd go to learn at a night class at RMIT, and I started doing a 8-week Revit course, 3 hours every Monday night or something, whatever it was after work. And I had a job in council that I'd done all in 2D, and it was in for planning, and I knew I had about 6 weeks till I got it back, and it was quite a substantial development. It was 6 two-storey townhouses, so it was a biggish residential job. And I thought, while that's in council, if I can start drawing that up in Revit while I'm learning Revit, when it comes back, I might be able to submit the documentation stage in Revit, and that was my goal. And so every week, once I finished class, I just tried to remember a bit. I had some notes, and I just tried to, and I started the using of Revit. When I was using it through the week, I learnt more than I did in the class, because I'd hit sort of things, go, how do you do that? How do you do that? So when I went to class, I'd say, can I ask you how to do this, 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 and this? And I started picking up more because it was quite practical. By the end of that class, I never ever went back to 2D CAD. And that was the only software program that I was drawing in for that at the office. I basically said, this is it. I've changed to Revit. And so, but it was more of a natural fit with me. It was a bit more intuitive, and it just sunk in. It was really good. So I tell people that because it's not a complex program to learn. It's just, you just need to practice it. You just need to use it all the time. And if you want to learn it, you know, just investigate, just keep, because you'll hit some stumbling blocks and you'll think, oh, I just spent 3 hours trying to do something. But if you don't, you'll never learn how to do that. So you just got to just keep going, go. So that's why I tell people that. and it's the only software, and I've worked in now big companies and trained up big companies in using Revit for their requirements as well now. So so I like it, and I hopefully you guys will really get on board with it and run with it, because you'll get jobs if you've got the skills in it. So every Monday we'll be in this room. Don't need to log on. Next week bring a something bigger than 8 gig if you want me to give you the software. Between now and then, if you get onto the Autodesk student, log in, get your serial numbers. If you want to have a go downloading it, installing it, feel free. But otherwise, I'll have the software that I can give you next week, as long as it's just slightly bigger than an 8 gig space. So don't just bring an 8 gig memory stick, it won't quite fit on. And then when you go home next week with that, you can install it and you'll be up and running at home. All good?
Yep.
Cool. See you next week.
Thanks, Jason.